Hey, Michelle, let me know. All right, we got it. Okay, I will call the Thursday, August 3rd meeting of the Gig Harbor Planning Commission to order. It's 5:34, and we will begin by calling the roll. Commissioner Bradbury,
Here.
Commissioner Soltis,
Here.
Commissioner Burkhardt, Commissioner Jordan, Commissioner Snodgrass is excused. Commissioner Tessassini, did I get that right? Close, okay. And for staff, we have Robin, we have Michelle, and we have, oh gosh, forgive me. Roxanne, I'm sorry, Roxanne, I have senior moments more and more frequently, the more senior I get. Okay. Approval of minutes for the July 20th, 2023 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I would. Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
I will
Commissioner-
second.
All right, and we have a second. Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And now we come to the public comment section. So we don't have anyone who would like to make a comment. Audience member, would you like to make a comment tonight? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. It's good to hear. Okay, we have Commissioner Burkhardt joining us, so we can mark him as present. Okay, so we have our agenda item for tonight is the draft climate action plan review and discussion. Robin, do we have a consultant to present this tonight, or is it going to be staff?
We do not. It will be Roxanne Robles presenting, who has been working on this for months.
Okay, excellent. Roxanne, take it away.
All right, thanks, y'all. Good afternoon. So hopefully you all had a chance to review the plan prior to the meeting. I just have a pretty brief presentation here. All right. Okay, it just takes a minute. All right, so I just wanted to go over kind of where we've been, where we're going, what the plan is, what it isn't. So thus far, I'm sure you all have heard me talk about this process a bunch of times already, but just a reminder, and also for the public, we formed the Climate Change Comprehensive Plan Amendment Committee, the CCCPAC, last year, which gave us some guidance on a comprehensive plan amendment, which we adopted last fall. We added climate change goals and policies to the comp plan, ordinance 1501. Last year, we secured a climate planning grant from the Department of Commerce and hired a planning consultant, and they've prepared this plan that we're going to talk about and review. I wanted to talk a little bit about the climate action plan scope, just to clarify what it is meant to do, what it's not meant to do. So the climate action plan, or CAP, is a city policy document. It is going to guide city operations and policy for the next, 10 to 20 years, or whenever we choose to update it again. It has a lot of overlap with other city plans. It can't touch every single thing in every single way, but it does reference and synergize with a lot of other things that are already in progress. As I mentioned before, it's going to be implemented over a 10 to 20 year timeline. I think we'd all like to see this implemented, 30 years ago, but we're here now. And also the CAP is going to evolve. We're going to take the recommended policies of this climate action plan and take it with us over the next few years and continue to develop different regulations and different procedures based on what we learned. I wanted to make it clear what the CAP is not. This is not a public education document, and it's not a mandate for individual action. Again, the CAP is a city policy document, and it's not meant to tell people to use, to dry their clothes outside rather than using a electric clothes dryer, those types of things, to compost at home and whatnot. This is focused on city operations, what the city can do and what the city can advocate for on a regional, state, and federal level. It is not a tree ordinance either. It references the urban forestry management plan, but this is not going to have as big of an impact on tree preservation as the urban forestry management plan and as the tree ordinance. And then this CAP is not perfect. Again, it is going to evolve and it's going to be implemented over a 10 to 20-year timeline. Any questions about the climate action plan scope?
So, and maybe tell me just to hold off on it. So when you mention like it's overlapping with other city plans, is that in the sense of like, there's going to be the elements within the comprehensive plan that would be very similar to what's in the CAP plan, that type of overlap, or is it more like supporting elements in other plans?
With regard to the comprehensive plan, I think the climate action plan is going to influence how we shape and incorporate things into the comprehensive plan, not the other way around so much. And as far as overlapping with city plans, for example, there's a strategy in here, or maybe some actions to, like encourage bike and pedestrian usage, get away from cars and fossil fuels and street focused transportation. And then that's actually going to be kind of like implemented in a more specific way by our transportation plan and the capital improvement plan. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Any other questions about the scope? Okay. So what's in the climate action plan? It kind of went in 3 different but somewhat overlapping phases. We had the greenhouse gas emissions inventory and analysis that included a greenhouse gas inventory. These were all spearheaded by our consultant. So greenhouse gas inventory, an analysis of that greenhouse gas inventory, and then target setting based on, what the inventory and analysis said, and also where Pierce County is going. We heard from Planning Commission early on that they wanted to kind of stay in line with Pierce County. Then the consultant developed strategies and actions based on kind of back and forth with the greenhouse gas inventory and analysis, and then also public engagement, staff engagement, council and commission engagement. So they kind of proposed a set of strategies and actions and then kind of vetted that against the public and staff, council and commission, and then kind of went back and did some more, the multi-criteria cost benefit analysis and a prioritization. And then we have the list of strategies and actions that are in this draft plan. Any questions about the CAP planning process? Okay, great. So just to recap, our community engagement include both external and internal engagement with our consultant. So we did a community-wide survey. We had a community meeting or workshop, more like it. We advertised the workshop and ways to engage with this in a number of different public forums. And then as far as internal engagement, we also had a staff workshop that included all of our different divisions that would be touching this plan, just to make sure that everything that we were putting out there was going to be achievable in some way. And of course, we also have had plenty of council and city commission meetings. So next steps, you're probably wondering, how is this going to tie into the comprehensive plan? I mean, Commissioner Tessaccini already mentioned that. We have a mandate from the state to adopt a climate action element by July 1st, 2027. I think that we are going to need all the time that we can get to get that into our comprehensive plan. Although we are updating it now, things are going to change and we just don't have the staff resources to put that together with the comp plan amendment and everything else that we have going on. But we just wanted to make sure that you understood that horizon and that it is a plan to get it into the comprehensive plan.
So, I mean, like you were just mentioning, like, it's like, staff resources and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And given that here's this, wave of work that has already been done,
Mhm.
but then there's this other, tsunami kind of behind it
Uh-huh.
to even do more. I mean, and I saw that like on the Pierce County, they have their own little, sorry, it's like three-person department for sustainability.
Mhm.
I mean, is there a way that, chisel out some funding for at least one position for you guys to have somebody who's kind of like dedicated?
That's above my pay grade for sure.
It is our hope and frankly expectation that there will be additional grant money coming. But we have no way of knowing at this point what's coming, the legislation that requires this to be its own element, which also includes resilience, right? So we're also dealing with climate based disasters and things. That's still pretty new and came to us as we were, starting work on the rest of the comp plan update. We had hoped that we could use more of this to inform our overall update process. And as Roxanne said, there's just so much that's already going on with the rest of the update. But if there is money available, we would certainly use that to put work. It does deserve its own, if not its own division, then at least a dedicated staff person. But we're little, counties are bigger. They have more money, more people. So we will certainly use it, whether that is to hire a consultant, as we've done with a lot of this other work, maybe bring Cascadia back, who knows, something along those lines. We'll certainly be looking for every grant that's available out there. And I'm confident that there will be some money. But we'll be looking at some of this as we work with the comp plan to sort of, stick pins in places, sort of, to see where we know we're going to need to deal with this. I don't want to say that we're, completely waiting until, this process is done and then we start. We need to think about how to integrate that. But it is a whole separate project. So long answer to your question. Yes, money, wherever it is available, we will seek it out. And we've been pretty successful so far in obtaining some decent grants.
Yeah, and that's, I think that also ties into the next kind of topic on this slide, which is plan implementation.
Before we leave
Yeah.
this, Robin, a question. Does the city have a grant writer position? Or is it up to each individual department?
That would be us.
Okay.
We are your grant writers. Roxy's been successful. I've written a couple. Again, we're small. We're actually down a position. We have not filled one of our planner positions. The budget's kind of a little iffy right now and we need to see where we're at, but we're a little bare bones, frankly. Luckily, we don't have, in terms of workload, we're at capacity. So adding anything at this point, but no, we write our own grants and so far we've gotten some dough.
I think it is often hard to imagine that all these things get done and we don't have like a little like hovel full of elves, but yeah, the people that you see are the people doing the work. I think that's good both for the planning commission and the public to kind of understand there isn't just like a bunch of people running around doing stuff. No minions.
No minions, no.
But
Can I jump in here just for a
Yeah,
couple questions here?
sure.
I'm not particularly happy with waiting till 2027. And
So-
I understand your staffing issues and my thought is that this plan is so good that it almost writes itself, its comprehensive plan element from this plan. I mean, it has all the things that you would normally put, I think, I'm new at this comprehensive plan stuff, but it seems like you've got all the elements in your plan right here for a comprehensive plan.
I completely understand where you're coming from, and I want to move to the next part, the plan implementation, so that I can address that. The horizon of July 1st, 2027, that just dictates the comprehensive plan adoption. That will not dictate how we implement what is in this plan. They're kind of like running in parallel. So I don't want you to think at all that we won't be working towards the goals in this plan just because it's not in our comprehensive plan. Once we adopt this plan by resolution, we will have a reason to work towards it. I know it's a little bit, it sounds a little bit maybe dissonant. But-
It will inform the plan, and as Roxy keeps going through her presentation, there are important elements or important pieces that need to be added for this to be a robust element. And honestly, we don't know, there's, we talked about the checklist last time we met, and it's not on our checklist, right? So we don't know all of the specific pieces that will be required, at least how Commerce is looking at that. So as Roxy said at the outset, this is really for city operations, but there's no reason that we can't implement or put in policies that address sort of a wish list for what we want citizens to be, doing. Now, policies help to inform our operation, but as I think you suggested, something that, policies that encourage people to get out of their cars, policies that encourage people to, do all these other sorts of alternative, less energy intensive activities, we can reference those. Those are not part of this document. So we will have to augment it. And that's not something we're waiting on until 2027. We're just not promising and promising your commission or city council or the community that we're going to have a fully fledged, fully formed element by 2024.
And maybe you're gonna talk about this, Roxanne, but that story is a good one. We're gonna move forward on a bunch of fronts, even though we're not gonna do the comprehensive plan element. And that is important, maybe as you present to other groups downstream here.
It's a good talking
Because,
point.
you're gonna go after, I think we're gonna go after like maybe some ordinances that are, the plan says we should move forward on
Mhm.
X, Y, and Z. And maybe there's an ordinance that we could adopt that would help along that way. So doesn't have to be a comprehensive plan approved to do that. You can still do it from this document.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe I should have flipped these, the plan implementation, talked about plan implementation, and then that comprehensive plan element horizon. And you're right. I think there are a lot of things in this plan that can be drawn into a climate change comprehensive plan element. The state just has it's just a lot more detailed, and it's just like a whole different way to write it. So finding the time to do that is going to be hard. But yeah, we're going to keep moving on this. So some ideas for implementation. Any other questions about the comprehensive plan element? Okay. So again, it is a living document. We're throwing around the idea of having an internal work group that will meet, semi-annually to make sure that we're continuing to work through the things in the climate action plan. And then also potentially having a semi-annual planning commission meeting to focus on climate action items so that you all stay up to date with what's happening and can give your feedback and keep us accountable as well. Any questions about plan implementation? Yeah.
And, tell me, we can talk offline on this one, that being, totally a newbie on this, on the elements within the comprehensive plan, I understand, I get it that what's in the element, the content it's almost, kind of like roughly, or maybe not so roughly dictated by, further up the food chain, so to speak. How about the formatting of it, of the whole plan? Can that be, is that also dictated?
By the state? No.
Oh, okay, that's, I would just.
Okay. All right. So now I'm just hoping to kind of open the floor for your feedback on the strategies and actions proposed in the plan. We don't have to go in any particular order. These are some, just food for thought when thinking about the plan and the strategies and action proposed. You'll notice in the implementation section that I included a set of kind of quick wins to hopefully give you some hope that these things are going to be achieved before 2027. There's definitely some stuff in there that we can get going on pretty much immediately. So
I had a few questions.
sure.
Well, like on page 13,
Mhm.
and it's, the at a glance page,
Oops.
I was just kind of wondering, and well, first of all, I want to say, like, this thing is awesome. And now that I have a better understanding of how things are going to go forward, I was just kind of wondering if would it be worthwhile, maybe not, to have another column that just shows which of the, like how the targets and metrics, the blue bar, the cross-cutting and municipal, how that links with, one or more of the elements within the comprehensive plan.
Oh, I see.
And so that, so right away there, maybe it's too soon or it's not a good, I don't know. I just wanted to toss that out there.
Okay.
And then, as an example, like the transportation one, obvious one is transportation, but also, housing
Mhm.
would be, so it's something like that. And so that was, and then I had some other thoughts, or should I hold off? I don't
No,
know.
this is open floor for
Um,
commentary.
So on page 22, the 8% aviation element scale to Gig Harbor,
Mhm.
I'm assuming that's just based on CTAX data.
Yes.
And then I was just wondering was there, any benefit to include if it was even relevant, the regional airport here?
I don't think they could get data for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, on page 31, totally minor, grammar thing, the changing the word icon to the plural icons.
Okay, sure.
So, and then on page 24, I was wondering if there was any statistics on the percentage of emissions for in-town driving or between the UGA areas and, like the shopping areas. So kind of like, I know there's been a lot of focus on, commuting between Seattle and here or what,
Mhm.
other plate bowling and stuff like that. But I was just wondering how much, if there had been anything done, relatively internal to maybe, or even Martindale, to the shopping areas.
Yeah, so that has definitely come up with a lot of folks, like how do we pinpoint, trips and things of that nature. And we just can't get that specific of data because we're not just like tracking every person all the time. So again, like the CTAC data, the transportation data is scaled from regional emissions and travel information.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
Is this okay where I'm just kind of going through the questions? Okay. And these two are like out there, okay, so they can just be,
Sure.
flipped away. I was just wondering, because, I have a relationship with the National Academy of Sciences back in DC, and they're already looking at migration patterns mostly from around the Gulf states, moving up towards the Great Lakes. And, and I'm sure, folks read the news and you get this whole thing about the Southwest, teetering on the brink, right, with the water issues. And then if I, have a grandson in Tucson, I talk to him a lot. he gets worried occasionally, but if I was living there, I would be going like, maybe it's time to figure out a way of getting myself out of, you know. And so I was just wondering, has there been any looks by the state or, you know, or regional, you know, for Puget Sound region or something about anything going on that way? Any
I mean,
studies
like
done?
climate refugees?
Yeah, kind of, you know, similar to what's, you know, they've already doing studies on the Gulf to the Great Lakes.
We didn't look at that in this plan because it was focused on municipal operations. But I definitely know, I've seen stuff like that. But I mean, we can certainly predict growth, and I don't know that every, you know, our predicted 2,500 people in the next 10 years are all going to come from just people having kids in Gig Harbor. So
And then,
I just wanted to follow up Tim, on that point that you made there, because that's something I was wondering about myself. And that is, if you look at the weather map, who's got the most pleasant temperatures right now in the country? It's right here. And I'm just wondering, you know, you get another summer or two like they're having in the Southwest, and I think you're gonna see the climate refugee thing really start to kick into gear.
mhm.
So yeah, I think that's a very valid point.
the only reason I bring it up, it might be just if there was a, you know, like kind of a straw poll, you know, just a quick and dirty analysis done on querying folks that are moving out already and saying, you know, and I think they can even get the data. Well, anyway, it'd just be, you know, say, oh, you know, well, the cluster, you know, the range is actually extending, you know, from the, you know, what is like a 50% increase over the next 10 years or something like that here in Gig Harbor to maybe the outer range would be 75% or even double. You know,
Do you mean to influence housing policy or transportation policy, or
yeah,
what?
I mean, or just influence it where it would be, you know, valid.
Okay. Interesting.
And then the other thing I would, yeah, and then, and I'm sorry, I feel like I'm capital. Okay.
Mhm.
The other thing I was wondering about was, and again, I don't know whether it's possible, you know, forgive my ignorance on this, is that the, and I'm reading some of the stuff in both in comprehensive plan and in the CAP. I get this sense that there is a strong desire to have an effort towards, you know, like kind of like social equity, just, you know, social justice. And I was wondering, you know, and it's been around not for very long, but the whole idea of kind of like, you know, I call it full social return on, you know, cost benefit. And because right now, most cost benefit analysis, you know, is strictly, you know, bookkeeping, right? You know, it's like, you know, you X number of people per square foot in the park kind of thing. And so that means there's too many people for the size of the park, and we got to see if we can, you know, that kind of thing. And so I was, but if there was ways of including that other piece in regards to the more squishy, if you will, type of thing. And there are maybe 3 or 4 at least organizations that are really trying to put some rigor around that. And I was just wondering, is that a worthwhile thing to explore?
Oh, of course. Environmental and climate justice is, or climate equity is really important. And we addressed it in the plan as far as just, you know, like, how do we think about actions when we implement them? And is this going to impact people living with disabilities, BIPOC communities, et cetera? In Gig Harbor, we really only have one census tract that would be considered even marginally kind of like disadvantaged and from like a wraparound socioeconomic type of lens. But I think it's always going to be of the utmost importance.
The reason why I bring it up is that the UGA analysis that was done by some consultants
Mhm.
that just popped out earlier this year. Because I mean, reading that was like, you know, it's just a totally classic way of doing the cost benefit. And so I was just wondering, like, you know, it'd almost be I'm almost tempted to say, yeah, I'll take that on if you want, to knock on the door of some of these organizations to say like, okay, here's something here. And how would it look? Would it look any different if you did include these other elements to be able to come up with, you know, a more comprehensive cost benefit analysis, that kind of thing? I don't know. I mean, yeah. Anyway, so I just wanted to, so,
Sure.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, I said it's an open floor, so I know that,
okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know, like, you know, you got your presentation too. I don't.
no,
wanna-
this is it.
Oh, this is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, the, okay, I'll skip. Okay, yeah, it's good, I'm just. Oh, and I was wondering, one of the things for me with that was a word that I hadn't come across other than like, you know, when I was used to do woodworking is cross-cutting.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering, maybe adding that definition, because it's mentioned on page 11, but the definition isn't really on page until page 33. And
Oh, okay,
I was thinking like maybe just add it to that list of acronyms
sure.
and key terms and so that.
That's helpful. Thank you. And if any of you have thoughts afterward and want to just send me an email with thoughts kind of enumerated, I know that Commissioner Soltis took advantage of that, and I really appreciate that. Just, you know, like page whatever, here's this that I found. That helps me keep better track of it, I think. But also being able to talk through it in the meeting, I think adds more context as well.
Well, you're checking on one thing. I want to follow up on your question about aviation emissions.
Mhm.
And this one kind of bothers me a little bit. I know you don't have much data to work with, but it seems like the end goal we're trying to get at is reducing miles flown by people in Gig Harbor. That would seem to be where we might have some influence, similar to vehicle miles traveled.
Mhm.
It's education, it's outreach, it's all kinds of things like that that might make people reconsider that flying. Hasn't worked with me yet, and I'm sorry, but I'm hopeful in time it'll kick in.
Yeah.
But the idea is that's something that we have more, it seems to me, influence in our community on.
Yeah.
What they do with Boeing and super jets and fuel, aviation fuels is way beyond our little community. So either we can't get at that number, and so we're going to try to do advocacy for aviation emissions, or we can get at that number. So I guess, like Loretto said, maybe there's some more work to be done in that area
Mhm.
to find a factor that we can actually influence in Gig Harbor.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so yeah, I think you're right, education about the impact of flights and how much fuel that uses. And then also the more direct way that we can influence that's in the plan is advocating for the decarbonization of aviation fuels. So just like advocating on a state and federal level for less carbon intensive fuels.
That it seems like the advocacy, our power and advocacy is very small.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of
Sure.
things.
Yeah, but it's two prongs. There's two ways to kind of go at it.
All right, well, that's good. Okay.
I would just follow up with that with transportation is one of those areas where the objectives to me are almost unachievable. We have a direct conflict between the growth of our area in general and the growth of our city specifically, which is going to contribute directly to things like vehicle miles traveled. And yet our stated goals are to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And those two things seem mutually exclusive in a growing community.
Well, having more people living closer to amenities, facilities where they work definitely decreases vehicle miles traveled, but that also requires investment in infrastructure that makes it nice to walk and nice to bike. And
Well,
also,
again, though, Gig Harbor in particular is a community where a very high percentage of the population, working population, works elsewhere. In
Mhm.
some cases, big elsewhere, like Seattle or Olympia, or even further out than that. And they make those community commutes on a regular basis, sometimes a daily basis. I did for many years. I simply would not have the jobs I had in Gig Harbor.
Mhm.
And that is true of a large percentage of our population.
so there's, the commute trips, there's that you do to work, but there's also a number of trips that you do every day, going to the grocery store, taking kids or, someone you're caring for to the hospital or to daycare and things like that. And I think that there's a lot of different ways to come at vehicles miles traveled. But when we only focus on, things related to capital and commerce, only things related to work, then that leaves out a lot of the other trips that happen throughout the day. But the way that we're talking about vehicle miles traveled also assumes kind of like a status quo. It assumes that we're only going to be driving, we're only going to be living in the communities the way that they look now. So I think if we do stay with a status quo, yes, it is going to be very, very difficult to reduce the number of vehicle miles traveled. But there's a lot of different ways that we can reduce vehicle miles traveled. Through land use, through advocacy, education, through investment and other kinds of infrastructure.
And I don't dispute that. All I'm saying is that those efforts, so let's say all those efforts contribute to reducing an average person's vehicle miles traveled by 10%. Just throw out a number. And the community population increases by 20%. Your total community vehicle miles traveled have gone up.
So do you think we shouldn't address transportation in our climate action plan?
No, I'm not saying that. I am saying the way it's stated, it is not achievable.
Do you have a specific goal or target in mind?
I do not, because frankly, as I said, I think it's unachievable.
Okay.
In my view, vehicle miles traveled are less critical in terms of climate than they are in other aspects of our comprehensive plan. Infrastructure, not just roads and things like that, but where you are going to be building, for example, a new business infrastructure to promote local employment, those kinds of things.
So you,
Those all dovetail into other aspects of our comprehensive plan. And they're obviously also addressed here in the climate action plan. So there's this overlap.
so I think what you're asking for is just like different ways of measuring success.
Yeah, perhaps that's a good way to put it.
Okay, yeah, we have a lot of different metrics in
You know,
the
there-
strategies and
there has
actions.
to be some way, other than total vehicle miles traveled,
Mhm.
which are obviously going to change in a growing community. So maybe it's a reduction of 10% against a floating baseline.
So in our metrics for transportation, we have electrified passenger vehicles as a metric, electrifying freight and service vehicles, decarbonizing off-road equipment, reducing passenger vehicle miles traveled, and advocacy for decarbonizing aviation fuel. So that's 5 different ways to measure our success with transportation strategies and actions. Do you have one that you want to add?
No.
Okay.
We're talking, I was talking about vehicle miles traveled.
Okay,
specifically.
well, it's not the, it's
Those
not the
other
only
things,
metric.
My general comment would be that frankly, if we're looking globally.
Well, we're looking at Gig
moving-
Harbor.
Moving to 100% electric does not necessarily reduce our carbon footprint.
Okay, well, we're looking at Gig Harbor municipal operations, so. But I appreciate the comment.
I was gonna say, Commissioner Bradbury, that, you know, it's vehicle miles traveled in a fossil fuel car. That's probably the ones that we really are most interested in getting down. But in the meantime, I think Roxanne's got we got a multi-pronged approach. If we get more electrification of passenger cars and the other kinds of vehicles out there, reduce some vehicle miles traveled, for however we can do that. In concert, those together, I think will help us a lot. Will they solve the problem? Probably not. It won't go to zero, but I'm optimistic that we've got a lot of things going, and it's not really, Gig Harbor can kind of basically take advantage of a lot of the work that's been done at the state level to push these things forward in terms of electrification and laws and carbon fuels and things like that. So that's the wedge chart that's in the back of it. It shows all the things that have been done at the state and national level to bring down our emissions. And we're lucky in many ways that that's been done, because it's going to help us power down that curve faster in a lot of different areas. I get it, Larry. Vehicle miles traveled is tough.
And I would, you know, maybe there's confusion on my part or just general confusion here. If we're talking about city operations, that's one element that the city has a very high degree of control over.
Yeah, that's why it's in there.
If we are talking about the boundaries of Gig Harbor and the people who live within those boundaries, that is another game entirely. Are
As
you
I said, the plan
specifically
is a
addressing
city
the
policy
city-
document.
What the city does within its operational base?
Yes.
Okay.
But also, I think, Roxanne, we're saying that we can educate and motivate the larger community
Yes.
along these paths. We don't have the direct control over that,
Mhm.
you know, sharing knowledge and sharing programs and processes is something that the city can do.
Yeah.
It's not the city's emissions, but it's in the city, and we can have some influence there too.
Yeah, of
So I
course.
think we try both.
Yes. It's in there. We have goals to do education and outreach as we can. We can't control every single, you know, like outreach medium and educate every single person, but we can leverage partners, we can leverage like-minded organizations, we can leverage schools. There's a lot of different ways that we can do messaging.
And we can create opportunities, right? When we talk about transportation, we talk about multimodal. If we do make, you know, safer bike, walking, other modes of transportation, as Roxy said, if we, you know, create more walkable communities where you don't have to get into your car to go get groceries or what have you, if we create more affordable housing and you don't necessarily have to commute. So we're taking little bites. We're not claiming to, you know, change people's behavior overnight. It took a long time to get where we are, and it will take a long time to you know, recover. But we have to, I mean, we owe it to ourselves and kids and grandkids and future generations to take some bites. And if there's another way to do it, you know, we're open to it. But we want to make sure that we at least provide some opportunities for our citizens, our residents and folks to, you know, to be part of this effort. And so we will be talking about those things with the other elements of the comp plan as well.
Nothing else. I just had that one comment, which kind of characterizes some other things I was thinking about. And I think it's helpful the plan itself obviously is very comprehensive, very well written. I see a focus on city operations, over which we have a great deal of control. And I see the community outreach part of it. So for my edification, what is the purpose of the plan? To control city operations or to reach out into the community?
I mentioned before, this is a city policy document. So
City
yes, it is about municipal operations.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
So
Mhm. That's a great question. So that whole analysis isn't part of the document, but it's reflected basically in which strategies and actions showed up in the final plan, if that makes sense. So the consultant had this like huge spreadsheet. I mean, yeah, that isn't necessarily reflected in the plan, but this consultant had this like huge suite of different strategies and actions that they, because Cascadia has done plans all over the place for decades. And so basically they kind of went through what they thought would work for Gig Harbor, and then using that multi-criteria analysis, that's how they kind of like drew out those things that would work for us, because that's the way we wanted to analyze all these strategies and actions. And then they further prioritized it based on kind of like the staff resources we had and the types of the types of things that we could accomplish.
So there is a longer list of things that were considered, and what we're seeing in the plan are the top scores or the best.
Yes,
the ones that
exactly.
Cascadia and you
Yeah.
thought were the most appropriate.
Yeah, and those were, and we whittled it down both through the multi-criteria analysis and also through the community outreach and through the staff workshop.
So that's why you have a feasibility icon. You have a feasibility icon. I was thinking, if it's not feasible, well, why would you be a yes or no, right? If it's
Wait, is
feasible,
there a specific action that you
well,
noticed?
well, I just when you see the word feasibility and if you've got this action in your plan,
Uh-huh.
by definition, I guess it's feasible. So it seems like maybe the feasibility mattered when you were doing the massive list of the actions.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So we have things that are realistic and easy to implement. And it's kind of, well, I don't think we're putting anything that's completely unrealistic in this plan. I'll say that. But like the things with that little feasibility icon, those are kind of the things that wound up with that 1 to 5 year kind of quick win type implementation plan.
Yeah, I was having icon fatigue.
Totally.
I was looking at each one of the things, this is a mountain. What is this again?
I wouldn't think too hard about the icons. We're going to take this and develop an implementation plan to better track it. It'll be, more of a living document that we'll be using to kind of make sure that there's like money associated with actions. We have people assigned to it and things of that nature. So yeah, don't worry too much about the icons. Worry about the content of the strategies and actions.
Maybe a big deal about green housing.
Mhm.
And one of my concerns is why are we worried particularly about affordable green housing? We should want all housing to be green. And I think we're going to have to, based on the state law that's coming down the
Mhm.
road. So I just thought maybe narrowing to affordable housing might be, I know you're trying to make a point that we're in alignment with the housing assessment.
Mhm.
But we want, I think all housing in time needs to be meeting the state standards for
Yeah.
greenery, to use the worst word. bad
Yeah.
word. But I make that general comment. Thank you. And the other ones, I think I'm gonna let ride with my written comments, Roxanne.
Okay.
Do you have the ability to change this plan before you go to the next step in terms of, it looks very polished and beautiful.
Mhm.
And, is this your product of your work, or does it, we have to go back
Uh,
to the contractor?
The consultant, yeah, but I've been tweaking it as I've heard more. And just going through edits and kind of, they don't know the city the same way that we do. So just kind of like internal vetting. I've tweaked very, very small things, but planning to take this to city council September 14th to adopt by resolution if there were no kind of like major ground shaking revelations tonight. So yeah, there's still ways to change this and add in your comments. That's exactly why we're talking to you today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
See, do we have Commissioner Burkhardt joining us remotely?
Yeah, he is still there. So I was just
Okay,
checking to
then
make
I'll
sure
turn
we
the
lose
floor
him.
over to him.
Oh, thanks. You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. No, this looks great. I'm just looking through some of the timeline actions here and things like that. And it looks great. It's exciting. Is there any baseline of how much solar we have in the area right now or in the city limits?
I am not sure. That
I
would
just-
be, I feel like a remote sensing project, maybe?
Yeah, I was just curious because we have a solar energy grid resilience and community solar projects. There was incentives from the state for community solar that came out 20 years ago that were kind of slow to implement or slow to adopt. Some pretty strong incentives, frankly, that kind of have gone by the wayside now, so that the 3 clock timeline on that seems a little excessive for me, although I understand the coordination between the city's operations and Penn Light's capacity and things of that nature. It seems like we could be moving a lot faster on some of that in nationwide. I mean, that's society wide, but anyway, I was just kind of curious where we're at with that now, but
HOAs. What does that mean?
I think that's kind of it. The main thing that popped out at me
Can change
on that.
Okay, thank you. That actually brought up that Michelle was saying that the design manual prohibits reflective roofing in some cases, which would prohibit people from installing solar. So that's totally within our control to change that.
Yeah, I think there's a fair number of things that, and as we get into the comprehensive plan too, that we've seen that could stymie some of these goals as far as, along the lines of some of the more innovative solutions to, as far as energy efficiency. And I'm thinking also of water retention or reuse. There's a fair amount of good technology coming down the pipe here that I know is kind of slow to implement because, as you guys look over plans and things like that, it may not necessarily fit in with our current code, and it's kind of hard, I know, to step out and approve some of those things if it's not specifically in the code. It involves a little bit of risk. So I
Yeah.
don't know what we could implement to kind of fast track some of those things or allow a little more leniency for those type of projects that maybe are trying to push the envelope a little bit.
Well, you bring up a good point, Commissioner Burkhardt, that, I think this plan, just the development, has brought to light a lot of inconsistencies. Well, if when we adopt this plan, there will be inconsistencies with our code based on the goals that we have here. And so that opens up an opportunity for us to just really, those are things that we can do pretty quickly. We can, adopt an ordinance to kind of just go through and get rid of these barriers to helping people have, greener homes and having greener technology. That doesn't really cost the city anything but staff time.
Right. It was a minor thing. I was just thinking about public works and, are we landscaping our public spaces with native plants and drought tolerant, even down to the standpoint of, how much grass are we putting in that we then have to mow with carbon producing lawnmowers or weed eaters or blowers for that matter. So just, the maintenance standpoint from it. Again, minor things, but it's all kind of little bites at the apple, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Take a shot at this. The first thing that struck me about this plan was there's kind of a basic reason why we're doing this, and that is climate change.
Mhm.
But I did not see a statement in here that says that the best scientific evidence that we have is that climate change is being driven by carbon emissions. And there is a whole industry out there of climate change deniers. I participated in a sort of an online blogging sort of a thing here last week, and I was really kind of surprised at how many climate change deniers are out there in this area. And there's all kinds of weird stuff on there, like, I won't drive an electric car because they catch fire, except that the statistics show that you're 4 times likely to be involved in a car fire in an internal combustion engine. But there's all that kind of stuff out there because there's these wealthy people and these industries that are driving this thing. No, we can't let go of carbon fuels. We have to keep using them because it helps our bottom line.
Mhm.
So I would like to see in here some kind of statement to say that we're doing this for some very good scientific reasons. That's the whole basis on which this thing stands.
Okay.
And second, as we talk about vehicle electrification, there is kind of some intermediate steps out there. And I think one of the things that frustrates me is as I've been thinking more and more about the internal combustion engine and how it affects climate change, I see a lot of driving habits that contribute to this unnecessarily. Speeding, people sitting there with their cars idling while they're texting, these sorts of things. The other day, there was a guy who ran into the pharmacy and he left his car running. There's another guy who lives behind me who has a diesel truck and he warms it up for 10 minutes before he drives.
Oh, my.
I mean, you haven't had to do that for 50 years with diesel engines,
Well,
but you just never got the message.
yeah.
And we're not going to transition to electric cars in the next 5 or even 10 years. It's going to take a long time, and people are still going to be driving cars with internal combustion engines for a long time. So we need to maybe include an education program for people to use them more efficiently
Mhm.
and not so wastefully.
Yeah.
I would ignore the aviation issue from the perspective that we have here in the report. And I would suggest maybe we take a different tack, and maybe Commissioner Burkhardt, because of his occupation, might have some thoughts on this, but we're talking about building another airport
Mhm.
here in the area, and nobody wants it in their neighborhood. Everybody wants it somewhere else. And I'm wondering, why hasn't anybody at the state level given any thought to the possibility of connecting Vancouver, Portland, Seattle, Tacoma with high-speed rail in lieu of another airport? Much more energy efficient. And I don't know, Commissioner Burkhardt, if you have any thoughts on that, but you've got a lot of aviation trips that are going between those airports. And I wonder if you could satisfy that need for travel with high-speed rail, if there would be less need for another airport, if we could make SeaTac last longer and save a lot of carbon emission in the process.
Definitely a thought.
I think I'd rather see us advocate for something like that than more fuel efficient jets, because I don't think we're going to have any impact there,
Mhm. Or both.
or both.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's going to be a combination of things. I mean, we have more fuel efficient airplanes coming out. They're quieter. The balance is that, the market demands 5 flights a day to New York, where we could haul people very efficiently with one large airplane once a day. So it's a tough mix between market demands and technological advances, but I agree. I mean, high speed rail, you may be surprised, and there's not a lot of number of people, I don't believe, moving between those three cities on airplanes, less so now, I think, than maybe a few years ago. Yeah, it's kind of, I think, again, small bites of the apple from every direction we can as we go forward. But the sustainable fuels thing, frankly, is coming along, kind of quicker than I ever suspected. And I think there'll be some good advances in that in the coming years.
That's great.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that perspective.
Yeah.
Next thing is bicycling.
Mhm.
Bicycling is a wonderful way to travel because it not only doesn't use up any carbon, it's really good for you. But this is a very difficult city to bike in
Yes.
because of the terrain. You've got that terrain problem.
Yeah.
You also don't really have very good biking facilities in terms of bike lanes, bike paths, wide shoulders. These are all things that are lacking in Gig Harbor. And I've looked at the city's bike plan, or the transportation element that deals with bicycles. And I sort of have the feeling that it wasn't written by people who do a lot of biking. I've had some success in years past by putting together committees of cyclists to do a bike plan. And I think that's something we ought to have in this, that we need to get together with people in the cycling community and have them be the driving force behind the bike plan. And the good news is you can turn that over to Public Works. You don't have to manage that.
Appreciate that.
So that would be something that I would definitely add to the plan.
Commissioner,
Okay.
can I ping off that for
You
quickly?
betcha.
I think a lot of us times we get hung up on biking downtown, to downtown,
Right.
which is the bottom of a bunch of hills.
Hmm.
I think another way we got to look at the infrastructure for biking and walking is getting people from neighborhoods around the business centers like Gig Harbor North, Point Fosdick, where there are business centers. Maybe the best bang for our buck is to put the sidewalks and bike lanes from those communities to the Targets and the Costco's and the Fred Meyers of the world. And because it's pretty flat, right? You can
Yeah.
do that for most of us. But going downtown is, that takes a special person to be able to bike up that hill.
Yes.
Maybe a ski tow would help. But anyway, the other business centers and their surrounding community would seem to be a target-rich opportunity for us in terms of that kind of infrastructure.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
And I think it's not only the terrain and biking downtown, but if you're biking down there and somebody opens their door in their car, you got an accident.
Hmm.
It's not a safe place to bike.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Burkhardt?
Oh, Burkhart.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think the advent of electric bikes has really kind of leveled our terrain issues, frankly, in the Gig Harbor area. I'm seeing more and more of those every day that really kind of take out that, that the hill part of the equation. I would submit that our bigger issue with bikes is it's a real estate problem. And I think probably a more comprehensive look at our traffic patterns, and it's in a lot of cases it's hard to make our roads any wider, but maybe we need to kind of reroute and maybe more one-way streets or something of that nature, because I think it's much more a real estate problem than a lack of ability to handle the hills, considering there's a lot more people riding electric bikes. That kind of, and I would also probably agree with Commissioner Soltis about the, connections to the, not just downtown, but to the other facilities and things like that, shopping areas from the outlying neighborhoods.
Thank you. That's
Thanks.
a really good point about the electric bikes.
The startup-
does that does flatten everything out.
Yeah, I would just, not everybody can afford an electric bike.
All these statements are very good. I agree with them all. I, in fact, don't ride much in Gig Harbor because I consider it unsafe. Some of the things that have been said, but the thing I want to add is the practical aspect of improving biking capabilities to shopping areas. When you're on a bike, electric bike or otherwise, you can carry only a limited amount of food or whatever. And so very few people would take advantage of that opportunity because they were typically going to buy more than they can carry. So they're going to use some kind of a larger vehicle.
I think everyone's shopping trips look a little bit differently. And I lived in Seattle without a car for 5 years. And so I just had panniers and I biked up those hills with my grocery haul. But, not everybody's that tough, but it can be done. You don't have to have a car full of groceries every time. I think any way we can chip away at the VMT, maybe somebody just needs to get like, some baby wipes or something real quick. They can bike to the store. That's one less trip in a car.
Yeah, I do make shopping trips to the pharmacy on my bike. One thing that was interesting that my wife showed me this evening in a magazine that she saw is they're now designing bikes that are more designed to carry loads. So they got places to hang your shopping bags up. So that's something else that's coming down the road.
Yeah. Extra Cycles is a company. They've been around for like 20 years. They make extended kind of cargo bikes.
I carry a family of 3 and a bag of groceries.
Totally. Yeah, they're cool.
Toddlers, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay to tag on with Commissioner Burkhart? So we live like behind the fire station over here by Kimball, and occasionally we try walking across 16
Oh
just
my.
to get some exercise. And I've also tried riding a bicycle. And I mean, basically, there's only 2 ways to go. So I did a little research. I found out that at one point there was a number of years ago, back like in the 90s, I think, or even somewhere in there, there was a plan that was approved, but then the money fell out on creating a pedestrian bike bridge in between the 2. Is that because unless there's some real work put into the overpasses, it's not good. I mean, either you're up on the sidewalk, so to speak, on those overpasses, or you're out in the traffic,
Mm-hmm.
and, gritting your teeth. So, is there any? Has anybody heard of anything trying to bring back?
Discussion.
Oh.
Yeah, it's definitely still on the table. It's money and logistics, of course, and but it hasn't gone away.
Yeah, I think it's still in the plan.
It is in the plan.
And that did remind me of one other thing, is that the Burnham, Oregon 16 Canterwood traffic circle is totally unsafe for pedestrians and bicyclists.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
A couple more things
I-
quickly.
I'd submit it's unsafe for cars too. Wait,
Yeah.
Played it
it's
like the
around
plague
there.
myself. Yeah, never on a Saturday for me is my rule of thumb.
Commissioner Soltis?
Yeah, on page 41, talks about maintaining tree cover and protecting land carbon sinks.
Mhm.
And the numbers are kind of confusing to me, like.
Oh,
what-
yeah, I know.
The 2030 target is 50% to maintain tree cover. And then it's 102% in 2050. So maybe you can kind of walk me through that percentage. The second question is about the land carbon sinks. It's 100% target in 2030 and the same in 2050. That sounds to me like no net loss of carbon sinks. And is that even possible, given all that we have coming down the road in terms of forest removals? And I think you would know, Roxanne, because.
Why
of the
can't I find that?
Recreation center. and the ball fields are gonna be wiping out a lot of trees, I believe.
So when we talk about carbon sinks, that is basically referring to critical areas which are already protected through statewide requirements to have like wetland buffers. So that's why it looks like no net loss, because I don't foresee a future where we don't have wetland regulations. So that's specific to that one. And then maintaining tree cover, reducing canopy loss. I know that's a weird metric, but
It's a Pierce County metric, right?
what's that?
It came from Pierce County, I suppose, right? But where
Um,
did they get it?
I don't know. I think that might have been one that the consultant kind of pulled out from their like little library. But I'm sorry, I kind of lost the nature of your question. Were you,
Just wasn't understanding the percentage numbers. I mean, what is it trying to get at here? Are we trying to hold on to all of our urban forest canopy, period? Or are we going to accept some loss and with the possibility of adding something to mitigate it for a net zero loss?
I think more the latter, because we can't, we have an intention to update our tree ordinance, which will help protect more trees in development. Because, a lot of times we lose a lot of trees with plats and stuff like that. But then also in our urban forestry management plan. So again, this climate action plan can't hold everything all at once. The urban forestry management plan has goals to maintain our tree canopy cover by, we do have to accept some loss to development, but the city has a lot of land that is underplanted. So the city can take on a planting plan to kind of continue to build our urban canopy over time.
Okay, that makes sense.
And evaluating, there's goals in the UFMP to evaluate the trees that we do have, because not all the trees that we do have as a city, in right of way and parks and whatnot, are performing well, because they might be species that are more susceptible to climate change, or, sometimes a tree is just not happy in a certain spot. So we're going to try and put some policies in place so that when Public Works goes out to do maintenance, they're tracking that, trying to understand whether or not a tree needs to be replaced, and maybe replaced with a tree that will be more resilient for that location, to climate change, what have you.
Now, in the appendix,
Mhm.
talks about sequestration gets us X amount of emissions that are taken off the table.
Mhm.
And then land clearing takes X amount and, throws emissions out. So there's two bars. One is you're sequestering carbon, and one is you're emitting carbon.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great chart, because those are two things you have control over. Even if you're losing land to development, there are ways to make that loss less intensive.
Yeah.
I think,
Yes.
in terms of the forest loss.
Yes.
And in sequestration, we can do what you just mentioned. We can plant more on city land, encourage people to plant on their own private property. So those are two levers that I think are really important, and I like the way that shows up.
Yeah.
As long as we think of it that way,
Yeah.
both can be effective.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the tree ordinance that we have, like kind of 90, maybe 85, 90% drafted. Because right now the zoning code just really treats trees as kind of just like this thing that you have around a development to buffer and screen. It doesn't really state that trees are this ecological resource. And so I'm hoping to kind of shift that with the upcoming tree ordinance, and to also incentivize people to preserve older trees, which we know provide more ecological benefits, more habitat, all that good stuff that we like out of trees.
Just a couple questions. I was wondering, like, along that line, I've noticed like some of the more recent developments here, either just outside the city limits, or they kind of do the old, kind of like the old school way of just like, bare earth the land and then start building. And then
Yeah.
they put in, little baby trees, and it's gonna take 20, 25 years before they're doing anything. So is there, does that, and I haven't read, and I'm sorry, maybe I should just go ahead and read the tree ordinance first and then, but I mean, is there gonna be anything in there about, like, try to minimize the impact even in a new development, before during the build out?
Yeah, so in our current code, we encourage people to, well, it's a policy, it's a regulation. You have to retain 25% of the significant trees. So that's any tree 6-inch diameter at standard height. So like basically chest height, or larger. And so what usually ends up happening is people just end up retaining all those trees in the buffer because it doesn't say where they have to be. It just says retain 25% of trees. So that's why you see the bare earth type of thing. And I also, we want more housing. We need more housing. Housing is an issue. So there is like a balance between the need for housing and trees. But I think that there's a more flexible way to do that. Some municipalities use a tree credit system. So I used to work in Woodinville. We used a tree credit system. And so, if you're in a certain type of zone, you need to have X number of tree credits. The bigger the tree, the more credits. So you just have to have that number of credits on site. And so that disincentivizes just this bare earth, only keeping things in the buffer. If you have like a really big tree that's going to give you a lot of credits, then it's worth kind of keeping that tree around and working your development around it. So there's a lot of, and that's just one example. There's a lot of different ways to go about tree preservation.
I'll do more homework.
That's fine.
The other thing I was wondering about, two more things, and because I'm realizing we're getting close to and I don't know whether this can, it's just an idea, going back to EV, the electric vehicle thing, and there's some of the arguments of almost against it is saying, well, you're in the building of a brand new EV vehicle, there's all this other stuff besides, and there's the chassis and all
Emissions, yeah.
And I was thinking, talked to a friend of mine who just transferred from the UK, and what they're doing in the UK, starting to, is sponsoring shops, auto shops, because you can basically convert internal combustion cars to electric vehicles.
Oh, that's cool.
They're not going to have all the bells and whistles of a Tesla or something. You're not going to get the super fancy stuff or any of that stuff, but it's running on a battery. And so they're sponsoring the boroughs, or these, however they got it set up in the UK, to help add in that service, if you will, and because it costs a whole lot less. Compared to spending 50,000 or more on an EV, brand new EV vehicle, or even a used one, you take your beater in there and bam, so I don't know. I just wanted to kind of throw that out because I think one of the things that's going to happen that's going to be tough is, change is hard. Right?
Yes.
So, and the transition, there's going to be these places where there's going to be stressors. And I'm just trying to think of would there be, and I don't know, anyway, I just want to pop that one out of there. My last thing is, so realizing that the cap is for the city for the most part. But also it looks like it's going to be the initiating oomph for moving into the comprehensive plan, that element. I was wondering if there was any value on either kind of surfacing the design assumptions behind the cap, or any type of document that's going to be tied in with anything really, where, kind of like your guiding principles, if you will, for what is perceived as being important. There's and there's all kinds of them out there. There's other Hanover principles, there's the UN sustainability principles. There's principles sprinkling hither and yon. And And I'm just wondering if there's any, as a way of being able to help, make it a little bit of a smoother transition from, a basically city-centric cap to one that's going to be moving more out into the community where you're saying, okay, and when you're getting involved in discussions with somebody saying like, well, this is what we're surfacing our assumptions and what we're using in our design guidelines and what we believe is the 4 to 6 to 8, whatever number of principles that come up in that development. And then that way, and then, say, if you got an issue, talk to somebody over there, but I don't know if I'm being clear. Is that, or? is
You
that-
mean like, do we have an underlying set of values from the cap?
Sort of, yeah, and just making it more explicit. And I don't know whether it'd be in the, and it just have to be like, if it's even seen as any kind of value, it'd be like, I'm gonna partially make this up. You just say like one principle would be in any effort or one of the principles that we're going to be operating from is to try to keep as much of the carbon in the ground as possible.
Oh.
And then obviously that's like way out there, right? Because, but, and then bringing it back down to earth, what does that really mean for the city? And it could mean a number of things, but just to take, and there's all kinds out there. I mean, I'm just using that one.
Yeah, so I think that maybe what you're getting at is our climate change amendment that we do have in the comprehensive plan kind of addresses that. I can't remember everything about it right now, but it does, say the city is going to consider climate change in all city operations. And then this plan is kind of, those more specific pieces of it. And part of the comprehensive plan amendment that we did was to adopt a climate plan and to keep updating it and keep it going. We don't have anything as complex as, like a set of principles like that, but on page 9 in the executive summary, we do have key themes we heard from Gig Harbor communities, a desire for city to provide leadership guidance and resources, top priority climate solution to include enhanced resilience to climate impacts. So these are all things that, we're not necessarily taking them from the UN, but they're kind of built from Gig Harbor community and what the community understands about climate change and what they want their future to look like. Okay.
Roxanne, on your strategies and actions, I think we've addressed the first one.
Mhm.
Pro strategies make sense with the goals. And
Mhm.
we've touched on the second one. Did we give you any guidance with the quick wins being achievable?
Well, I think what I've understood from conversations with you all and from council is that we need to get this going. So if you want to give feedback on the quick wins, that's fine. But I know that probably all of these would take very high priority for a lot of you, all the strategies and actions. But yeah, I'm very happy to take comment on the quick wins.
Okay, maybe we can get you then our comments there and maybe take another look at the quick wins and get back to you and email on what we think about those.
Sure.
Okay.
Would
And-
you consider a quick win a ordinance
Yes.
that gets approved?
Yeah,
or
so
approved?
the quick wins. Yeah, a lot of these things are kind of like advocacy or education that we could do by partnering, by just kind of like getting like with the schools.
Oh, yeah,
you know.
Get a committee working with the school.
Yeah, and then advocacy, and then urban forestry plan already in progress, tree planting incentive program already in process, water efficient landscape standards already in process. So yeah, a lot of these things are kind of ordinances that we can take on.
And adopting the Washington Business Code updates would be, you'd have to put those into your code, right? If they said
Oh, you mean the building code?
the building code.
Oh, yeah.
So that's coming down the road. I think you
Yes.
said in July, or I don't know, this year, I think. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
rolling those
There was a
into
pause.
our municipal code would
Yep.
be probably pretty quick, and we could do it ourselves, basically.
Yes.
right?
And I talked to the building officials and that's definitely, yeah, going to happen.
So comments on the quick wins would be something we could send in. We think of there are other things.
Yeah. Oh, I realized I was reading off the community engagement list. The quick wins is like climate considerations in government, regional public transportation, that's a partnership thing, bike infrastructure. We're going to be updating our transportation element with the comp plan. Curb management also with the comp plan, urban forestry management plan, native vegetation protection, and then carbon sequestering natural resource protection. That's also kind of part of the tree ordinance. So, yeah, we have, I feel really positive that we'll be able to kind of knock some of these out with literally just the tree ordinance and not just, but with the tree ordinance and with the comprehensive plan. So I think we'll make a lot of strides in the next couple of years.
We're with you all the way.
Okay, great.
Most of us.
Yeah, so yeah, if you don't have any more comments, yeah, definitely feel free to email me. Email's right there. Hopefully you all know how to find me. But I really appreciate all your comments. Oh my gosh, why does it always do this? So if you have anything, try and get it. If you want to make a comment, try and get it to me by probably the end of this month, since I'll have to kind of get materials together to take it to city council on the 14th. So if you want to have anything else incorporated end of this month, please.
Mr. Chairman, would it be useful to provide some kind of resolution from the commission in the support of this as a group, or and prior to going to the council, to let them know that we are very happy with the product that we've got? I mean, I'm not sure, Robin, how that works procedurally.
It would be unusual to have a formal, I'm sorry.
We can make an official recommendation.
We would certainly, Roxy would certainly, in her materials to the city council, reflect this meeting, previous meetings. This isn't the first time your commission has discussed the cap, but that would all be reflected in what is brought to the city council. So they will know that you have given it, more or less your seal of approval. It doesn't mean you can't put anything in writing. It's not normally if something is going to city council for adoption by resolution, unlike an ordinance where you would have a formal recommendation. Doesn't mean you couldn't, draft something and have it included in the package, but it's not the normal procedure.
Well, as long as the Roxanne's note to council
Oh, absolutely.
indicates that,
Yeah.
I think there's a sense that this is a very good plan, and we were very happy with it, and I think that might be good, John.
Okay, well, we're gonna poll the commission members. Commissioner Burkhardt, are you comfortable with what you see here?
Here.
All right.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
Yes?
Double yes.
Okay.
okay,
All right,
Thank you
so
all.
you know what the sense of the commission is.
great. I really appreciate all your comments and your just thoughtfulness in reviewing this. I'll take this and make the edits that I can before we take it to council. I'm really excited to start working on this with you.
Thank you. We appreciate your efforts on this very
Fantastic.
much.
Thanks, Roxanne.
Okay. All right, so now we're on to other business. The next meeting is Thursday, August 17th. And Robin, what's,
We're going to see Roxy again,
okay,
and she will be coming back with the urban forestry management plan that we also hope to take to city council, but again, with input and sort of last bits of comments. Again, this is a plan that this commission has seen, or most of the folks here have seen. Lots of work. Again, Roxy has put in a ridiculous amount of work on this, and yeah, I won't characterize our consultants and compare and contrast, but this required a bit more work, I'll just say. So you will be hearing from Roxy again in 2 weeks.
Okay, great. That answered a question that was floating in the back of my mind, whether we would get another crack at that before it goes to council. And we will. Okay. Any parting shots from any of the members? Okay, if not, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, we adjourn.
I'll second.
Second, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you all.